Hello, Trinity Tigers. Welcome to the Learning Together live webinar series. So this is a part of a lifelong learning initiative series presented by Trinity University's Office of Alumni Relations. I'm Harry Wallace, professor in the psychology department here at Trinity. And thanks to the alumni office for inviting me to moderate this webinar. It is a thrill to be able to introduce today's webinar speaker, Valerie Alexander, class of 1990. This introduction is not going to do Valerie justice, but we'll talk about a few things. Her talks based on brain science, evolutionary biology cover lots of things. Happiness in the workplace, the advancement of women, how companies and individuals can outsmart their unconscious biases. She runs Goalkeeper Incorporated, travels the world as a keynote speaker. She writes Christmas movies for the Hallmark Channel. I mean, this is definitely one of the most interesting people that one could know, and it's pretty neat that we're live with Valerie here today. So before I start asking Valerie hard questions about happiness, I would like to ask you, the audience, if you're watching this webinar, and obviously you are, to know that you will be able to submit your questions as you listen using the Q&A tab, and Valerie will hopefully be happy to answer any questions that you ask. And so I've met Valerie before in person, and it was alumni weekend 4 years ago, and I'm minding my own business, teaching a first year seminar. I think it was the last first year seminar before we changed our curriculum, and class is rolling along. We're getting going. And next thing I know, 2 people walk in the room and they're clearly not part of the class. What happened there, Valerie?
We were back for reunion weekend, and I was at a function and met your teaching assistant. Well, actually,
Yvette
Robin
Pena.
Stewart. I'm sorry?
Yvette Pena, yes.
Yes, Yvette Pena,
yeah.
Who is awesome. She was in my sorority, and she met Robin Stewart at a function and I was walking in as they were walking out because Yvette was leaving to go be at your class, and Robin had been speaking with her, and Robin grabbed me on the way out because Robin also works in the happiness field. She grabbed my arm and she said, "You're not going to believe where we're going." So I said, "What?" And she said, "Trinity has a seminar on happiness." And I said, "Oh, I have to be there." And Yvette said, "Oh, Harry's going to love having you there." She said, it's going to be great. So we got in our cars, drove over to campus, got completely lost trying to get to your room because campus is very different than when we went there. And so we walked in. Yvette told you who we were and what we were doing there. And it was 2 women who actually work in the happiness arena. And so you just turned the class over to us.
I don't remember. I don't think I had any advance notice that I recall.
No, not until
we were in class and y'all just walked in.
Yes. Totally unacceptable, I guess. Except your TA did say that it would be a welcome addition, and we really were. Now, you have to understand, we came just to observe. We really did come because we wanted to see what kind of, we all had freshman seminar too, and here's the funny thing, that was the last year of freshman seminar. We were in the first year of freshman seminar. Robin and I, our class was the first class that had the 8 basic understandings, the first class that had freshman seminar. And I have to confess, I'm a little sad to hear it's not around anymore because that was a really interesting and useful to have the entire freshman class having the same discussion topics. I thought that was a fantastic entree into education, especially liberal arts education.
Well, we still have an excellent entree. It's just a little bit different structure, but
okay.
And happiness is still in the mix, or it may come around the bend. Again, but
Good.
that was a special treat, and yeah, anyone visits your seminar and they're like giving talks around the world about the topic of your seminar, I don't think that you're just going to sit there passively. You're going to have to, if you're going to come to the class, you're going to have to step up and
to earn your keep.
Yes.
Well, I have to tell you what was the best thing about that. Like the fact that when we walked in, we both said what we did, and you said, well, you guys just take over. And we just talked to the class the whole time, and they had such great questions. I mean, they were Trinity students, so of course they just had great questions. And then afterwards, you had them fill out an evaluation of the class, and you sent those to us. And that
Oh,
was
yeah.
just incredible. That was so inspiring. I was really touched and very moved by what the students got out of that session, how just what they thought of it, and also how thoughtful and thorough their feedback was. So that's a highlight of my Trinity alumni experience for sure.
That was a good day.
Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding is that part of your inspiration for getting interested in workplace happiness came from a summer experience you had at Trinity.
um, it definitely taught me that workplace happiness is important. It was a absolutely sweltering summer in San Antonio, and I was a waitress on the river patio at the Hilton Palacio del Rio. And the Hilton didn't believe in overstaffing, which means that none of our shifts were ever adequately staffed. And the river patio, for anyone who's ever waited tables, they'll understand this. The river patio was the busiest restaurant section in the entire hotel. And it had 16 tables that was serviced by 2 waitresses and 1 busboy, which was insane. And even we could handle that, except for the waitresses did all our own prep. We made the salads, we garnished the steaks, we warmed your buns. If you ordered chips and salsa, that was all me. And God help me when you ordered fajitas, because I still remember, this was a long time ago. I still remember fajitas came with a bowl of beans, a bowl of rice, a scoop of pico de gallo, a scoop of sour cream, and a scoop of guacamole, and 3 fresh-made tortillas that had to be made on a machine that could only make 3 at a time, that the wait staff did. And so if a table of 6 all ordered fajitas, I was off the floor, period. It was kind of an unhappy summer to begin with, but then I came in one night in August, and it was a Tuesday, and the other waitress had not shown up that night. And so the manager said, okay, you have the patio to yourself. And I said, well, that's not a problem. We'll just do cocktails and appetizers, because that's what we did on weekends. And she said, no, we're doing dinner service. And I said, I can't do dinner service for 16 tables. It went back and forth in this argument. She got the food service manager involved. He said, quote, the Hilton Corporation is not giving up a night of dinner revenue because some waitress doesn't want to do her job. That was what he said. I overheard it. And so then I, again, still refused. I said, this isn't possible. I can't do it. So they called the hotel assistant manager. He came down. There was one central kitchen for the whole Hilton. And so there was an office in it that the restaurant manager was in. And so the hotel assistant manager, the restaurant manager, and my restaurant's manager were all in this office. And once again, the hotel assistant manager said, no, it's dinner service. He also referred to me as some waitress. Oh, I know. The manager of the restaurant said, when he said we're doing dinner service, the manager of the restaurant, who was on my side, said, well, that's not going to make Valerie very happy. And the hotel assistant manager, who is, if you're ever in a hotel and you're having a problem, ask for the HAM. HAM stands for Hotel Assistant Manager. That's how they know you know what you're talking about. That's always the highest ranking person on premises at any time. So the HAM of the Hilton said, when my manager said that won't make Valerie very happy, he said, what do I care if some waitress is happy? Well, 2.5 hours later, his question got answered spectacularly because we were at the point in the shift where I was literally so far in the weeds. I couldn't keep up with anything. I couldn't give good service. And we'll talk about that later, why that was such a problem later. I had people walking out on their checks. I had like 10-cent tips. And I was 2.5 hours into the shift, dying. I wasn't getting any of the help I'd been promised. And I had a table for 4 all order fajitas. And I walked into the kitchen and I started making those tortillas, and I started shaking. You know that thing where you're about to have a breakdown and you can't quite control it? And I was shaking all over, and I had that little bit of heave in my chest. I was I was having a breakdown, and then strangely, this incredible calm came over my whole body. I mean, my shoulders went down. I felt a little bit of cool breath. My hands stopped shaking. And it occurred to me, soccer practice starts in 2 weeks. School starts a week after that. I was going to keep this job for the weekends, but I really don't need it. I'm teaching for the Princeton Review. Why am I here? And so I took my little check folio out of my apron and I set it on the edge of the tortilla maker, and I walked upstairs to my locker and I cleaned it out and I left. I did not say one word to anybody. I just left. So I will take this moment, given that the audience is mostly Trinity alumni. If you were eating at the Hilton Palacio that night and happened to be on the river patio, I apologize. I realize it must have been chaos after that. But that's why unhappiness really isn't a good business practice.
You're kind of stressing me out. I'm having flashbacks to my own Tex-Mex restaurant waiting experience, and exactly. I'm thinking of, like, you know, table 206 out in the far east, and I only recently stopped having nightmares about that. So and I don't have nightmares about my current job. So I guess that's good. That's good. So I mean, okay, so happiness apparently is an important thing at work. Otherwise, people will just leave. If it's so important, and we agree that it's important, like why do so many companies just get it wrong?
Right. Well, first off, I want to make sure everyone is in agreement as to why it's important. Happiness, there are Gallup studies, workplace happiness. There's a lot of, we'll talk about the workplace happiness studies, but Gallup has been doing it for more than 2 decades. And isolating for all other factors in the workplace unhappiness costs our economy between $500 and $600 billion a year. Billion. Because, and people think that number seems so exaggerated, and I say, well, look at your workplace. The unhappiness is what causes turnover. It's what causes absenteeism. It's what causes a waitress to walk out in the middle of her shift. But far beyond that, unhappy people are the ones who steal. They're the ones who sell your corporate secrets to your competitors. Unhappy people actually not only are they more likely to bully and to cause you liability in the workplace for their behavior towards other employees, they have more workplace injuries. Unhappy people have higher instances of workers' compensation claims, and on average, their claims are for more money. It's really impressive how expensive unhappiness is. So when you ask why did workplaces get it wrong, one big reason is inattention. They're not even paying attention to it. They don't think that's a concern at all, is how happy our workforce is. But there's another big reason, and I have a term for this. I call it accidental managers. This is people who are put in charge of other people without ever being given 1 minute of managerial training. Not one. Because they get the job because of their experience, because of their education, because of their seniority, because it's their turn or they're next in line. I always ask, when I do this as a live seminar, I ask people, how many of you have ever had a job where you were in charge of somebody else? And I'll ask the audience right now, for people who are in the Q&A, you can answer, have you ever had a job where you were in charge of somebody else? And then I say, did you get trained on how to process time cards or how to make sure everybody got paid? Did you get trained on the health insurance policy? Did you get trained on where to park? And everyone's hand stays up, and then I say, okay, did you get trained on, hang on a second, I have to turn this off. sure the volume is down.
Well, David said he got trained, so at least one of our observers was
Got
trained.
trained.
So that's good.
Sorry about this. I had no idea that my phone was still on. I'm glad he got trained on all that stuff, but did he get trained on how to speak to his employees? Because that is something that nobody. I was a lawyer. I did not get 1 minute of training on how to work with an assistant or how to work with a paralegal or a junior associate. And I went to Berkeley Law, and then I went back and taught at Berkeley Law. And I took an hour out of my syllabus to teach the students this. Like, this is how you deal with your assistant. This is how you deal with the people who answer to you. And the students thought it was a waste of time. They thought that was ridiculous. Like, it was in sometimes the evaluations. Like, she told us things that we don't need. And then a year later, 2 years later, I started getting the emails. Oh my God, I'm so glad I know this. Or I can't believe the way some of my colleagues talk to their assistants. That's a big deal. Like, you can really change the trajectory of your career by how you speak to the people who answer to you. And that kind of training, the leadership assumes that people know it. There's two ways leadership views it. Either, people just naturally know. They're naturally good leaders. That comes from the leaders who are naturally good leaders. Or they think, I never got trained on this and I'm fine. And that comes from the leaders who probably aren't naturally good leaders. But there's some real basics of leadership that, again, people assume is instinct and is not. Here's one of the ones I talk about all the time. Acknowledge in public, admonish in private. It seems so intuitively obvious that you don't correct somebody in front of their colleagues or clients or in front of your customers. But how many of us has ever been in a business place and saw somebody getting yelled at? Has that ever happened? Again, answering the question, have you ever been in a workplace where you saw a workplace that wasn't yours, where you saw somebody else getting corrected? I had it happen. I was meeting a friend who was a real estate broker in her office. And while I was sitting there, one of the agents came out and started screaming at the receptionist because he'd missed a phone message. And I will share with you, I wasn't there to buy a house, but if I was, I would have gotten up and walked out right then. And that's another factor. Like, if you need to correct somebody, do it behind a closed door. It does not, and I don't care if it's the supply closet. You say to somebody, hi, I need a word with you, and then go behind a closed door. And also, be very careful to know what is a correction. I was in a workplace once, and they had a manager whose favorite phrase was, what are you doing? Now, I'm going to ask you, think of the words, what are you doing? And ask if there's any way you could phrase that it doesn't sound like a correction. And it's not like, hey guys, what are you doing? No, that's not what they were. Every time this manager walked up to anybody, she would say, what are you doing? Or what are you doing? I mean, it didn't matter. It always sounded like criticism to them. And these are important things for people. Are you always communicating criticism to your employees without even realizing it? And again, if you have to criticize, do it behind a closed door. If you have to correct, do it in constructive language. Do it without blame. And then the acknowledge in public part, man, tell people they're doing a great job and tell them in front of other people. That's really valuable. Again, think back at your best day at work ever. We'll talk about best day at work ever a lot, but do you remember a day when somebody said to you, hey, you're doing a great job? And it could be work, it could be volunteerism, it could be when you were a student, it could be any time. If somebody told you, this is super, you are awesome, you're really nailing it. If they said that in front of other people, that exponentially increases the value of that communication.
Is there any risk of other coworkers kind of being a little resentful about that, or like competition wise?
If they're left out, if you're a manager, make sure you are getting everybody. Make sure that you have a reason. And I don't mean that every single day. This isn't walking through the office every day going, you're doing a great job, you're doing a great job, you're doing a great job. No. But I don't be above keeping a calendar. And anytime somebody gives you something, what you expect, and it's excellence, acknowledge it specifically. Say, walk into the room and say, I just read the report that Jen and Andrew and Jamal turned in, and wow, it was really great. Thanks, guys. But then make a note of who else in that room wasn't acknowledged. And then in the next 2 weeks, they're also giving you their best work. Find something to thank them for. Especially find the person who isn't in the public open place. The person who's sitting in a back corner coding on a computer all day, find a way to compliment that person in front of other people, because they're not getting any acknowledgement for their work. And my God, your IT department, talk about a vortex of unhappiness. These are people who never get acknowledged for basically saving everybody's butts most of the time. And yet, when they walk into your office, aren't you just screaming?
I wonder if we have any IT people on the line here. Okay.
Let me know how unhappy. And I'm not saying that. Like there's a lot of satisfaction in that job, of getting it right, but it increases the satisfaction when you're acknowledged for it.
All right. So then, how do you inspire and motivate your coworkers, your colleagues, your employees?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, there's workplace happiness studies. So there are 3 long-term workplace happiness studies ongoing in the country. One is Gallup, the other is the Harvard Business School, and then the other one is UC Riverside. Sonia Lubomirsky at UC Riverside, Teresa Mabalay at Harvard Business School. And all of them have reached the exact same conclusion about workplace happiness, which is that the number one factor in determining somebody's happiness in their workplace is their sense of accomplishment. The Harvard refers to it as making progress on work that's meaningful. And again, think about your best day at work ever. Think about when you loved your job. When you loved your job, wasn't that the day you got stuff done? The day you got the most done, the day you solved that giant problem, the day you finalized the project that everybody had been working on for so long, whatever day it was, your best day ever at work was the day you felt accomplished, the day you felt you'd made progress. And so if we acknowledge that for ourselves, I can acknowledge my best day ever is the day I make a lot of progress, then I can create that for employees. I can give my employees the ability and the space to get a sense of accomplishment from their work. I can give them autonomy. I can give them projects and put them in charge. I did a huge corporate culture assessment for a YMCA chapter, a really large YMCA chapter where they had 300 employees. I did the corporate culture assessment, and I was asking the employees their best days ever at work. And a good portion of them were talking about the volunteer work that they did for the company because they were put in charge of things. One woman planned an employee picnic. Her best day ever at work was getting to plan the employee picnic and that was a volunteer gig. She wasn't getting paid for that because she got to do something. People want to feel that their work is meaningful and they make a difference. There's a great story. I can't say whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. There's a great story that when JFK very first toured NASA, he was going through the building and he came across an old gentleman who was mopping the floor. And he walked over to him. He said, "Hello, sir, I'm John Kennedy. I'm the President of the United States. What is it you do here?" And the man looked at him and said, "I'm here to put a man on the moon." And that's how your employees should feel about your workplace and about their role in it. It doesn't matter if it's somebody on a factory line turning a screw, right? And the next thing comes across and they have to turn that screw. And the next thing comes across. You know what you do with that person? You take them on their first day of work, you take them down to the very first end of the factory, of the line, and you say, here's where the raw materials come in. And this person takes them and separates them by matter. And then this person takes them and puts them into the stamping machine that makes them into the parts. And this person puts the parts in the right order. And this person makes sure all the connections and puts that screw in. And it comes to you and you turn that screw. And then the next person tests the assembly, and the next person paints it, and the next person puts it in a box, and here's the final product. Now, that person now turning that screw has a purpose. They have a purpose every day. They understand that purpose. They understand where they fit in the process. They understand if they're not there, things don't get done. I had the privilege of doing a happiness in the workplace training at Trinity for the staff. And Dr. Richard Butler was in the room. And afterwards, he told me the best story. I use it in my talks now. He used to work at Northrop Grumman in Southern California. And they had so many employees that they had their own exit ramp off the highway. And so the exit ramp went, and there was an employee parking lot on one side of the exit ramp and the factory on the other side of the exit ramp. And so there was an overpass. And they built the factory so that the planes that they were building came out of the factory onto that overpass. So that means that every single employee, while driving into work almost every day, saw a plane coming out of the assembly line. You think that didn't inspire them to go give their best, to go do their best work? When you pull into that parking lot and you see a plane coming out of a factory and you know, I built that, I designed that, I market that, I mop the floors so that that can get built. That's how we give our employees happiness. We give them a sense of purpose.
So if we want to do that, anything that we should be thinking about as far as like a pitfall of how you can undercut someone's sense of accomplishment that maybe wouldn't be obvious?
Yes. One of the chief employee complaints, and I used to do a lot of corporate culture assessments. I don't do that anymore. It's mostly speaking. But one of the chief complaints is moving the goal line. I call it moving the goal line. What it is an employee will get started on a task that they've been told to do, and then the boss rushes over and says, stop doing that, go do that. Or the boss forgets, gives the employee, hey, I need you to do A and B and C. And the employee does A, no acknowledgement, and the employee does B and is about to finish B, and the boss comes over and is like, hey, okay, I need you working on X and Y and Z. And as the boss, you don't even think about that. You're thinking, well, these are things I need to get done. But if you're an employee, that's so destabilizing that just takes away all your confidence, all your belief that you're doing a good job, all of your sense of accomplishment. You do A and B, and then you haven't gone to C yet. You don't even know, all right, am I supposed to go do it? It happens a lot because in workplaces, we react. Again, because people are accidental managers, because they weren't trained. When something comes up, they don't respond, they react. So if you've got an employee, I don't know, alphabetizing invoices, and then a customer calls and says, my shipment never arrived. Well, that's urgent. That's immediate. This is what I call the tyranny of the urgent. And so you turn around that employee, you say, hey, go find where that shipment went. And so you again, as the manager, you don't think anything of it because you know the priorities. You know what's happening. You know that a customer didn't get their shipment. I always say this in all of my talks on both advancement of women, on unconscious bias, and on happiness in the workplace. If you're on a ladder, and you are higher than someone on that ladder, how is your view compared to theirs? So If you're the boss, you have a better view than your employees. It is your job to prioritize things for them in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're failing. So the natural reaction is to say, hey, stop alphabetizing invoices, go find that shipment. Because you're solving that problem, way to go. But I would counter that what you should do is take 10 seconds. Instead of taking 2 seconds, take 10 seconds and say, hey, thanks for working on those invoices. You're doing a great job, but someone just called, can't find their shipment, and that's more important. I know you can handle that, so I'm trusting you to go track down that shipment, but when you're done, please come back to the invoices. Now, yeah, that took a lot longer. If you're the boss, you're thinking, why do I have to say all of those words when stop that, go do that is just as effective? I promise you, it is not just as effective. So when you're speaking with an employee, lead with appreciation, especially if you're changing a task or if you're reprioritizing for them or if you're giving them new assignment. Lead with appreciation. Thanks for working on those invoices. Then give them clear directions, which is, I need you to go do this other thing, and when you're done, come back to the invoices. Or, I need you to go do this other thing, and when you're done, don't worry, just go home. You just give clear direction. Employees are not good at being self-directed when there's tasks involved. They're trying to please you. They're trying to guess what you want. Just give clear direction. That will solve a lot of workplace problems. And then always express confidence in somebody's ability to do the task you're giving them. Expressing confidence is a way of setting an expectation. And people always give you what you expect of them. Whether it's your employees, whether it's your students, whether it's your children. If you expect excellence, you're going to get excellence. If you expect dishonesty, you get dishonesty. If you expect loyalty, you get loyalty. People want to and will strive to give you what you expect of them. So express confidence in someone's ability, and they're going to give you their best.
Okay. I'm having a lot of thoughts about, sorry, social psychology lab, we'll work on this stuff. So how about some misperceptions about managers that managers have about what works and what doesn't?
Oh, that's another good one. So my favorite study is Teresa Mabile at Harvard Business School. She did the study that discovered that the greatest factor in employee happiness was making progress. It's making progress on work that's meaningful, but making progress. So she did another study with 669 managers at various levels of management across a broad range of industries. And in that study, she gave them 5 factors, 5 actions they could take to increase employee motivation, to motivate employees. And of the 5 factors, one of them was provide support for employees to make progress. So she'd already found that making progress is the #1 motivator for employees. So when she said to managers, of these 5 things, rank them for how effective they are at motivating employees, the choice provides support for employees to make progress, which we've already discovered is the #1 factor. Of 669 managers, how many do you think ranked that as the #1 thing they could do to motivate their employees, provide support for the employee to make progress? Have a guess?
I'm not even going to guess.
1.
Wow.
0 out of 669. In fact, 94% of them ranked it last. Of the tools they were given, 94% of managers thought providing support for the employees to make progress was the least effective way to motivate them. In fact, in a different study, it was found more managers think fear is a better motivator than making progress or than accomplishment for employees. Now, think about how insane that is as an employee. All of us have been at some level or another in a workplace situation where we had someone who believed that. I was an investment banker. Oh my God, half the vice presidents believed that. And it's ludicrous. Have you ever in your life felt motivated to do a better job by fear? So that's probably the biggest misperception, is what you can do to motivate your employees. What you can do to motivate your employees is give them clear direction. The way I say to remember your communication is you rock your employees with AC/DC. Appreciation, clear direction, and confidence in their abilities. And when you do that, when you communicate with appreciation, clear direction, and confidence in their abilities, then that is going to motivate them to accomplish things, and it's going to give them autonomy. That was also the number 2 factor in all of these studies. Autonomy is the number 2 factor in determining workplace happiness. And so with accomplishment and autonomy, your employees are going to give you their very, very best at all times.
Even if you're dealing with a toxic employee?
Toxic employees. It's always interesting when I get to this point in the talks with companies and I say, what do you think of as toxic? So I'm going to throw this out to the webinar audience. Just type in it when I say someone in your workplace is toxic. What kind of words come to mind? What kind of behavior do you think of as toxic in your workplace? What are the things some people are saying?
So as I'm waiting for responses, I give a, hey Anna, good to see good to see that you're weighing in here. Former student, so she's weighing in that she had a leader who thought public shaming was an effective technique. And several people ended up quitting the team and the firm because of her. So, all right, so some responses.
Okay, so that's the number 1 toxic.
Negative, bad attitude, grumpy, chronic complaining, rude to people trying to help. Hey, Dr. Wallace. Hey, Samantha. Bullying, disrespect, unable to get along with others, micromanaging, combative, uncooperative, unappreciative, bringing other staff into their negativity, terse. Oh my God, it's negative out there. Out to get other people. I think you touched a nerve. Making fun of others.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I have to say I haven't even
all
heard that
caps.
So this is one of the worst mistakes companies make. They don't deal with toxic. And I will share with you right now, if you are ever in a leadership position, the moment you notice someone is toxic, do something. And I'm going to give you some directions on what to do. When I was practicing law, there was a guy in our firm who was so toxic, it was his nickname. People referred to him as Toxic Tom. And the firm didn't do anything about it. And you know what? I did a happiness talk for a major retailer, and it was for their legal department. So it was a small group talk, but for I'm not going to say the name, but everyone has shopped there. And when I got to the section on toxic employees, I noticed everyone in the room, their eyes go like this. So that
looking at Toxic Tom.
Yeah, but it was a woman, and after I went and talked to her, just spoke to her for like 15 minutes, and it just it was so clear. And so then afterwards, I was doing a debrief with their general counsel, and I said, "Oh, and by the way, you have a toxic employee in that department." And he said, "Oh, I know, I have a toxic employee." And first off, I couldn't even believe that response. But then he says to me, "Wait a minute. Who are you talking about?" And I said the name, and he went, "You've been here an hour." And I said, yeah. It revealed itself. And so I said to him, "Get rid of her." And he said, "I need her." And my first response to that is always, if she got hit by a bus on the way to work tomorrow, would your department shut down? And the answer is no. So he's like, "No, I'm in a position I can't replace her." I said, "Okay, then I have some homework for you. I want you to make a list of everyone you've lost in the last 2 years, and then create a chart where she's at the center of it and draw circles around her and plot everyone you've lost by how close they were to her, either in their desk proximity or in their work assignments, or if they answered to her. And then I want you to calculate the value of all of those people. And he called me 2 weeks later and just said, she's gone. And I knew she would be, because it's the frog in the pot of water. We don't notice. We don't notice when people are leaving. Harry, you and I discussed this before. Nobody has ever been honest in an exit interview. People leave and they're like, oh, I'm seeking different opportunities, or, oh, I got a great job somewhere else, or I want to go back to school, I want to spend more time with my family. Nobody says, I'm leaving the living hell of a nightmare who sits at the desk next to me that I can't stand being in a room with every day. But if you're a leader, you notice that. You can't deny toxic. You know it's happening. And here's the people you lose. You lose the people who have options, which means you lose your best people. The first person to leave is your highest value employee, because that's the person who has an option to go somewhere else. And as long as you tolerate toxic, you will continue to lose your highest value employees. So here's what you do about toxic. You do not have to fire toxic. You can counsel. You can try to correct. Take that person into a room and close the door, because all conversations like this have to happen behind a closed door. I would recommend having someone else in the room who is in a management capacity, so that you don't want that person to feel ganged up on, but you definitely need witnesses to the conversation. And you open with this, and everyone is going to need to write down this phrase. You open with, I'm wondering if you're aware. I'm wondering if you're aware of how your behavior affects other people in this workplace. I'm wondering if you're aware that when you come in every day and complain about this company, it demotivates other people. I'm wondering if you're aware what it feels like for someone to be criticized by you. And start a conversation. Now, this is extremely important. This is a conversation, but it is not a negotiation. That person is going to get defensive. They're going to argue. They're going to go into denial. Let them express themselves. They need to do that. Let them express their side of it. Let them discuss their behavior. They may even try to justify it. You can say, I hear you. Don't say, I understand. Don't nod in agreement, because that nod is going to be perceived as being on their side. Let them express, and then stick with your position, which is, this behavior is going to change. And that is non-negotiable. It is non-negotiable that the toxic behavior will change, or a change will be made. And that has to happen, because if it doesn't happen, you're going to lose good people. And before you lose those people, you will start seeing all the effects of their unhappiness, which is absenteeism, turnover, bad customer service, workplace injuries, negative treatment of customers.
No fajitas.
Sitting at the table wondering why their waitress hasn't shown up in the last half hour. Exactly. Yes. I can't emphasize enough how important it is, number one, to get to ameliorate, mitigate, fix toxic as soon as you notice it. And number two, don't be the toxic person in your workplace. Don't gossip. Don't talk about employees with other employees. Don't share negative opinions about the company. Negativity can roll up, it can't roll down. That's one of the first things they teach you in the military. When you join the military and you get into a leadership position, the first thing they train you is you don't ever complain about the military to the people who answer to you. You can complain to the people who you answer to. They don't like it, but you can do it, but never to the people who answer to you. That is a great principle to bring into your workplace as a leader. Yeah, but boy, toxic. Do not put up with it.
All right, so I'm wondering whether our peanut gallery here of Trinity Tigers out there, who's got some questions for Valerie? Anyone with some contrary positions or other things? No, come on, bring it on.
Okay.
So as we're waiting, so I'm curious about. I mean, some organizations are more overt about their efforts to make their employees happy, and like a lot of attention to the like Google environment, playhouse kind of thing, and all kinds of crazy stuff that would like let's make it a playpen type of a thing. I just wonder if you have any views on that kind of when it's very obvious that they're trying to make their employees happy, and they're kind of mixing what normally you wouldn't think of as a workplace environment, like fun with the job. What do you think about that?
So I am so glad you mentioned Google specifically. Google's average tenure right now is 14 months. Average. Now, that means that for all the employees that are there for 3 years or 4 years, think about how short somebody has to stay for the average to come down to 14 months. And they'll tell you it's because, it's so rigorous there, not everybody makes the cut. They have an interview process that they refer to sometimes as hazing. They pride themselves on how tricky and difficult and challenging they can be just in their interviews alone. Think about the kind of person that attracts to that workplace. Google and Amazon is the same. They create these really cutthroat environments, these really competitive environments. You have to like sharpen your teeth to go into a meeting at Amazon. And yeah, there's a foosball table. Like, great. You are worried if you've been given 3 weeks to do a task that takes 2 months. You've been told your job depends on it. You don't have the resources to do it. And there's a foosball table. I mean, are you going to be happy in that work?
Foosball's not getting it done, huh?
Foosball's not getting it done.
Man.
Call me crazy. Free lunch isn't getting it done. Now, I do want to go to some of the more. Now, so yes, foosball's not a negative as long as you're doing everything else. There's another side of what you're talking about, the companies that seem to be focused on the happiness of their employees, but for the weirdest reasons. There are companies that monitor their employees' happiness. Like there is software you can buy to put on an employee's computer that pops up a little window every like 2 hours and asks, what mood are you in? And the employees have to respond. That is horrifying to me. Like if I was in that workplace, I wouldn't feel cared for at all. I would feel spied on. So like here's an interesting thing. If you want to have you want to increase the workplace happiness in your workplace, provide a free breakfast like once a month or every other week on a Thursday or a Friday, not on Monday, because providing free breakfast on Monday makes it seem work related. Like the same thing with free lunch. All of these tech companies have their own cafeterias and they have their own lunch on their campus. Why? Because you are chained to the place. It doesn't actually make you happier that you never leave. You never see the sun. You don't have the time to get somewhere else. But in terms of the workplace environment, like, foosball or bowling leagues and things like that, those things are all great. They don't take anything away from your workplace environment. But there are some real baseline things companies have to make sure they're doing in order for their employees to be happy, to have the ability to even be happy. Things like security and safety. If your employees are afraid that they're going to be a victim of workplace violence at some point, or if late at night people have to walk back to a car that's in a garage down the street and you don't provide a security guard to walk them back, I'm sorry, there's no amount of free lunches that are going to make that employee feel secure or safe in their job enough to ever even be able to contemplate happiness. So security and safety these things are, there's a researcher whose name I can't remember, who calls this workplace hygiene, calls this the hygiene of your job, which is the basic needs have to be met. You have to be earning enough in that job to survive. You have to have a living wage. In the whole happiness community, and Harry, you and I have talked about this, in the whole happiness ecosystem, the field where people are training, and myself part of it, we rarely talk about the financial security aspect of happiness. And it's really disingenuous. Yes, you can be happy in a one-bedroom apartment with your 3 kids all sleeping, on cots. You can be happy. That is not impossible. You can be a happy person within those circumstances. But if you are on edge, at the edge of homelessness constantly, if your belly is empty, if your children's bellies are empty, if you don't know if you can take your kid to the doctor when they get sick, it is a much harder slog to even contemplate happiness, let alone to get there. And companies can do a lot to ensure their employees don't have that kind of unstable environment, unstable life. Paying a living wage, making sure your workplace is safe and secure, providing health insurance, these are critical components to just the baseline levels that people need before they can even start thinking about happiness. And I would encourage everyone in any kind of leadership position to really assess what you're doing for your workers and making sure that those basic needs are met. And I will challenge you, if your basic needs are met in those ways, then everyone who works for you has the right to have their same basic needs met in those ways. And so do what you can. Do what you can to ensure that that's happening.
All right, Valerie, I got a pretty good question here. There's a lot of questions and comments that have been coming in. So,
Okay.
but one that definitely caught my eye. So Hannah's got a question. What are your thoughts on radical candor? The idea that we are hurting our teams and companies by not offering enough direct and constant feedback. I want to know the answer to this.
It's funny. Silicon Valley, the TV show Silicon Valley, made fun of this, and for good reason. That's like radical candor is like, it's another word for brutally honest. And I've always said, even long before I was working in the happiness field, there's brutality and there's honesty. Those are 2 different things. So the concept of giving employees constant feedback works for some and not for others. And it is your job as a leader to figure out what's going to work to get the best out of your employees. One of the things I talk about a lot in my work is we got this ridiculous idea from the Bible. The Bible said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those words came from the mouth of Jesus. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When Jesus said that, he was talking about how to treat your enemies. And that is right. That is how you treat your enemies. Do unto them as you would have them do unto you. That is not the golden rule. Like, people then translated that into something called the golden rule, which is treat others as you want to be treated. You know what? How many people listening are married? How effective would it be if you treated your spouse the way you want to be treated? For men, how effective if you treated your wife the way you want to be treated? We should ignore that, the golden rule, and bring in.
Now you tell me.
The platinum rule. Treat other people the way they want to be treated. That is how you're going to get the best out of everybody in your life. your spouse, your children, your employees. So when it comes to radical candor, you know what? Have a conversation with an employee and say, hey, what works best to motivate you? If I share with you what you're doing right and where it needs improvement at all times, or if I give you a task and leave you alone for 2 days with the faith that you're going to do it and do it and get it done correctly. Another thing, total side note, and excuse me if I haven't answered the question. When your employee is given a task, just because they do it differently than you would, that doesn't make them wrong. There's a lot of times where the task is start here and get to here, but there's some obstacle, right? And so you can't go that way. And the boss is thinking, okay, then go that way. And the employee thinks, okay, then go that way. You know what? Takes the same amount of time and gets to the same place. But then if the employee is right about this point in the process, when the boss shows up and the boss expects them to be there, the boss is going to say, wait, what are you doing? Get there. That's what I need you to do. And then think about all the time wasted. Now you got to go through the obstacle. You got to climb up to there. Give your employees, give them the opportunity to show you why they're doing it right. So back to radical candor. There's a big difference between honest and mean. And there's never a reason or an excuse to be mean. There's a lot of phrases you can use in order to give people feedback in a way that is helpful to them. Like, I'm wondering if you're aware. The phrase, a lot of times, that's not going to happen. Someone's talking about what they want or what they need. Say, no, that's not going to happen. But, the other one I really like is, let me adjust your expectations. Let me adjust your expectations. Here's what we need from this task. Here's what we need from you. You tell me what it's going to take to get you to do it. You know, bring employees into the decision-making, into the conversation. But yeah, constantly, I run a tech company. Early on, we decided whether we were going to be agile or not and have stand-ups and scrums and all that stuff. And I had a tech team that was like, oh, please, God, no. Don't make us stop every day at 3 o'clock to stand in a circle and tell everybody what we're working on. It is so disruptive. And so I said, okay, and we've had people come in who said, I want that. And I'm like, all right, I'll check in with you every day at 3 o'clock. So.
All right, Valerie, we're on the home stretch here. So in about 90 seconds or so, give us a memory, something about your Trinity experience that influences you today. You prepared you for what you're doing now. Anything along those lines that comes to mind?
I will share the thing that I am so grateful for Trinity is Trinity made me learn how to write. Trinity taught me how to write. When I started as a freshman, I thought I could write, and then I took Vicki Aaron's freshman composition class. Thank God for Vicki Aaron's. That skill has worked for me in every single job I've ever had. We're lawyer, investment banker, when I was an internet executive, for sure as a screenwriter. But just being able to write a cohesive argument, a cohesive and effective argument, being able to take a point from 50 words down to 12 words. Oh, it is so effective. And Trinity, there's a lot of liberal arts schools that don't require it anymore. There's a lot of non-liberal arts schools that don't require it at all. You can go and get a degree by only taking math classes. Bully for you. Good luck when you try to start your own company and you need to write a business plan. I am so grateful for that aspect of my Trinity education, the rigorous requirement of learning how to write. And as far as my favorite Trinity memories, they're the unscripted ones. They're the things that were completely unexpected. I was on the women's soccer team, and we came back a week early, and so did the men's soccer team. And one night I was at a bar off campus, and I ran into one of the men's soccer players, and we started talking about our summers. And he had fallen in love for the first time that summer, and we walked back to campus together. And we wound up climbing out. There's a study hall between there's South and another dorm. I can't remember whether Isabel or whatever. And there's a study hall between them. And you used to be able, I don't know if you can, but from a balcony, you used to be able to climb out onto the roof of South. And so he and I climbed out onto the roof of South, and we just sat and talked all night about falling in love and like what that means, and him having a long distance relationship. And the sun came up, and we're like, what are we doing? How did that happen? Oh, those are the best moments. Like my two best friends and I drove to Austin to go to a concert, but on the way we stopped at in Georgetown. There's a university there. I can't remember the name of it. One of our friends
Southwestern.
Southwestern. One of our friends had transferred to Southwestern, and so we were supposed to go to this concert in Austin, and we just stopped into Southwestern to say hi. I wound up spending the whole day on the Georgetown campus and hanging out there, or in Georgetown on the Southwestern campus. And it was just, those are the days that are really magical. Those are the days that stay with you for a long time. And when the unexpected happens, and it's just special and forever.
Well, this has been a real treat. Thanks for
Thank you.
being able to talk with you for an hour like this. Is just a blast. So thanks for doing this. Thanks to everybody for the comments, for watching, listening to this. There's a few definitely some good comments there that didn't even get to get to. So sorry about that. But anyhow, thanks for joining the webinar. And FYI, the next webinar, Trinity Together, is scheduled for May 29th, and it's on a slightly different topic: developing a small profitable fashion business from home. It'll be a live conversation with Tiffany Shamal, class of 2007. Go Tigers.